process. Good evening, and welcome to the Cottonwood Heights City Council Business Meeting. Today is August 2nd, 2022, and my name is Mayor Mike Wickers. I've asked our Community and Economic Development Director, Mike Johnson, if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Mike. So item 3.0 on our agenda this evening is recognition of landscape beautification within our city. And we've actually chosen some winners in each district and one commercial business. I'm actually going to have our Community and Economic Development Director, Mike Johnson, come up, and he's going to introduce some winners for us.
Thank you, Mayor. This is always an exciting meeting. I think this is the 5th year now that we've done these landscape beautification awards. It's a program sponsored by the city's business association. And what it is basically is we put out notification of each year's round or when it's open. And what happens is residents throughout the city go nominate their neighbors and people in their neighborhoods and yards that they see for this award. And once the nominations are submitted, each of you as council members and the mayor go select the winners. So it's really great to see all the award winners here tonight were nominated by their neighbors and peers and fellow residents. And we just want to thank all the winners and all the nominees and the nominators for recognizing these residential and commercial properties that exemplify a higher standard of care, attention, and environmental stewardship, and add to the beautification of Cottonwood Heights. So what I'll do is I will announce each of the winners. I'll show a picture of the property, the winning property on the screen. I'll invite the respective council member to say a few words and come down for a photo opportunity. Likewise, if the winners are here, I'll invite them up and step aside, and then we'll just proceed like that. So in Council District 1, the winner was Misty Hobbs at 7115 South, 1700 East. Yeah. Misty may not be here. So we'll make sure we get the certificate. Yeah, you want to keep coming, Doug? Yeah. In Council District 2, the winners were Michelle and Matthew Parker at 2764 East Banbury Road. I'm Brecken.
Are the Parkers here? Oh, I will stay here. We had some really good nominees out of District 2. This one had a really nice balance of just care. There were a lot of things in it, and as usual, I expect some of the other nominees will probably come back in the future because it was close, but this one just edged it out. And it's also Banbury is fairly well traveled, so it was a really nice add to the neighborhood.
I do want to say, you can see on the picture, each of the winners receives a little yard sign from the city that just gives them a little more public recognition as well. Council District 3 was Caitlin and Colin Cassidy at 2199 East, 7110 South.
Yay! I know. This was fun, and I'm glad that I'm special and the winners came to see us today. I want to congratulate you, and I'm in the process of trying to figure out a design for my home to xeriscape the front yard. So little inspiration came my way. So thank you.
Hey, Mike, before you move on,
Sure.
I just, I know that Misty wasn't here to accept, but it was a very difficult decision that we made. At least in my situation, I went from home to home and I had to go around a couple times. It was very difficult. But I really do appreciate it enhances the whole Cottonwood Heights when we see this, and we love it. And hopefully others will take inspiration like that was mentioned. And the wonderful, it takes a lot of work to do this, but it really does enhance it. And it's very water wise too. It's wonderful, but thanks.
Thank you. Council District 4, the winning home was Julie and Jules Weaver at 8745 South Rustler Road. Are they with us tonight? They are.
Well, this property was so stunning, and Jules was nice enough to come out in his yard and further, help me to understand. But I must say that scuttlebutt was that you were mostly yeah. So I was thrilled with every aspect of it. They had not only water-wise landscaping, very strategically placed, with interesting different levels. They also have lighting that is for dark side lighting, but their lighting shines down onto the walkway instead of blasting all their neighbors. So I just loved everything about it, all the details. They also have done some interesting work with their entryway. It was just, all the entries were great, but you both stood out way above and beyond. So thank you.
Oh,
and
thank you.
congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
And finally, so we don't leave the mayor out, we always have the mayor select a commercial property in the city as a winner. This year's winner was a fairly new addition to the city over the last year or two, is the Sandy Rudolph Insurance Office on 1399 Fort Union Boulevard. I know Sandy's-
Actually, they've been here. They just moved. It used to be on Highland Drive.
Right, yes.
New
Yeah, this
location.
property is new to us. Sandy is here.
So let me just say before I come down to give you this, I just, it's not an easy decision when we look at all of these great designs, but my eye just came right to this. This is on Fort Union Boulevard and it just is inviting to come in and I just, was mesmerized and loved looking at your yard. Thank you for everything that you did. So yeah.
And I will say nice things just so you don't raise my rates.
The last thing I wanted to mention is along with a certificate, each winner gets a $50 gift certificate to Home Depot.
Those are all the winners. We'll post these on the city website as well, so people can see again the hard work and these good examples of landscape beautification in the city. Just on behalf of the staff and business association and the mayor and city council, I do want to recognize all the nominees and winners again and thank those who nominated their neighbors and who were nominated for the hard work they put into making Cottonwood Heights a beautiful place.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. Item 4.0 on our agenda today is city council committee reports. So we are going to have each council member take 3 minutes and give you a little bit of background of something that they want to talk about that's important to them in their district, somewhere that they are serving on. So let me begin tonight with council member Bracken.
I guess you're the mayor. You can adjust the agenda order as you will. I was so expecting Doug to go first, but
Thank
that's
you,
okay.
Mayor. Yeah, appreciate it.
This last month, a lot of my assignments come together. I'm on the Butlerville Days Committee. Obviously, we just finished that celebration. I'm also on the CH2 committee, which is where the city and the rec center board, because we are separate entities, we cross over to make sure that our parks, trails, the maintenance, and all those things coordinated so that we're working together. They're also very integral in what happens with Butlerville Days, making sure that the fields are ready for the sports and the things that we do. And they actually also help us when it snows, that they clear the sidewalks and around City Hall and a couple of the other walkthroughs for the schools throughout the city. So we work with them. I also work with the youth council. They do a lot of the service at Butlerville Days, cleaning the tables, help with the information booth, things like that. Last week we had a social activity at the pool where they just kind of had a chance to chill and visit and swim with each other. Our next meeting is coming up this week, and I believe they have gotten our canine unit from the police department to come and show them what they do. That's always interesting. Seems to be a favorite. We do it just about each year or every other year. My other assignment that I do is with Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling. They are the ones that collect the trash and the recycling each week in the neighborhood, keep the area clean. We are working through, I believe the postcards are out with the being able to get a dumpster brought to your home to be able to put things in. I know that there was some issues with the website, and it's been very frustrating on both ends, not only on the public's end. Apologize for that. It's sometimes if you've ever put together a new website, certainly one that's complex, there always seems to be additional issues. You just hate when it's something that comes up and bites you. Hopefully they'll get that resolved and have things running a little bit smoother there. But that's most of what I do, other than show up on Tuesday nights twice a month and hopefully make good decisions.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. Councilmember Peterson.
Thanks, Mayor. It's funny, this week, it's been a week of skunks and raccoons, chickens and foxes. And every day, it seems like I get a new experience of somebody having an issue, but that's not one of my committees, but it seems like for some reason, I get a lot of animal control issues down where I live by the creek. The animals love the creek, but that's not one of my committees. One of the committees I work with Sherry Martell is the business committee. And I hope that each one of you have the opportunity to try to be cognizant of where you shop. It really does help Cottonwood Heights, because we do get tax revenue, obviously, from those entities. And you notice the Home Depot that these certificates were given is not issued to the one in Sandy, it's the one in Cottonwood Heights. And so be aware of that. But we just had a ribbon cutting this week with Deseret Book, and wonderful. They skipped right over the line to us from Midvale to Cottonwood Heights, and they're thrilled and we're thrilled. So we look forward to new businesses moving in, and that's a big part of what we try to do in Cottonwood Heights, is bring those tax revenues and to make it convenient for each one of you to shop right here in Cottonwood Heights. Parks, trails, and open space, the PTOS, everything here. We have 400 acronyms that we have to learn when you're in the city government, but we had a tour of Little Cottonwood Creek at the end of it, more in where the business section is, about what we can do to help enhance that and have tables and things, different things, and walkways that someday farther down the stream that we can get there. It's interesting. I didn't realize, and I've lived in Cottonwood Heights most all of my life, that they're actually bringing Utah Lake water into our creek farther down by some of the Union Park. And did anybody know that? I wasn't aware of it. when I went down there, we stopped right there and I said, wow, look at that. The water changes from really clear and all the rocks were beautiful. And then it goes into kind of a not so beautiful water. But and so that's an issue that we're looking into, and that's part of a combination of sharing water and different things like that. But those issues are very important to Cottonwood Heights. The parks that we have, District 1 has 3 of our major parks. Right now, we've got work being done right now on Anzac, the new tennis court / pickleball court is being worked on right now. I'll be quick. I don't know if my time's almost out. A mosquito abatement, hopefully that each one of you benefited from that. If you aren't, then you need to get some of those mosquito fish in your ponds if you have those. And I won't get into some of the other things that I have to do, but grateful to be in Cottonwood Heights and love to be an advocate for our city. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Doug. Councilmember Newell.
Good evening, everyone. I serve on a number of committees as well. The Arts Council is one of them, and hopefully you've taken advantage of some of the events that the Arts Council is involved with. There was a photography contest that we had earlier this summer, which gives you an opportunity to bring in your talents to actually display it and actually compete against others from the area in art. Different types of photography were part of that, which was really interesting to see. And then to see how the talent went from, I think the youngest was age 11, all the way up, which is really exciting. The Arts Council also provides city residents with entertainment. The play Willy Wonka took place this summer, and it was one of the biggest productions that the Arts Council has done, and it turned out very, very well. A lot of the other events that they do are some of the movies in the park. I've still yet to take advantage of that. As long as it's not a vampire movie, I think I'll be okay. But they do a great job of bringing this entertainment to us. I also serve on the Emergency Preparedness Committee. And with that committee, we're looking at ways to mitigate occurrences if they happen within our city. So there's the CERT team that gets certified and trained. I'm out talking to neighbors right now in my immediate neighborhood about developing a neighborhood watch program again. We have a neighborhood watch, but we don't have much participation in it. So if you're in your neighborhood, you may want to think about putting together a group of people who come in, get the training from our police department, and actually put that together so we can actually watch out for each other, which as a village, that's one of our great responsibilities. I serve on our legislative committee. We do a lot of work with the Utah League of Cities and Towns. I get to work with our mayor and our city manager directly with that. And within that, I'm starting to take on some other tasks. One of them is working with our Utah Economic Opportunity Commission in finding ways to mitigate the instances of duplicity and other barriers in doing business with our state government. So hopefully we can come as a group, that small group can come together and develop some good opportunities for shifting the difficulties. One of the things that we're looking at is issues that businesses have in getting their permits or getting their business licenses. Something came up the other day was someone addressed me about liquor licenses. And I said, well, now I get to learn on this. Hopefully nobody gets mad at me, but I got to figure out how to help them out to find that pathway for a small business to be able to get a liquor license here in the state. So those are some of the things I'm working on. I'm hoping that I can continue my engagement with my neighbors and any issues that come up. I'm there to help you, and I'm looking forward to being a bigger part of the conversations that you're having about any issues that occur within any of the districts, but mostly district number.
Thank you, Sean. Councilmember Burrell.
Thank you. Well, it's been a busy last month, and while I would like to talk mostly about what has happened, I'm going to briefly mention that our introduction to e-biking event on July 21st was well attended. We had about 65 people who came out to Golden Hills Park. And Magnum Electric Bicycles provided 4 demo bikes. People really enjoyed learning not only about e-biking as a possibility for themselves, but also its tie-in with active transportation and making our community more walkable and more rideable. I also have been working to save the mature pine trees. There is a program in Cottonwood Heights where we have an arborist who looks at our parks and has done great work to ensure that the mature trees in our parks are being protected from the beetles. Again, we know in the time of aridification that we're losing trees right and left. There are 7 trees on the east side of Wasatch Boulevard that have the signs. That is, they start dying from the top down. I'm very concerned about that, and I'm working with staff to try to address not only the trees in the park, but also the trees that fall on the edges of our roadways that we know would be terrible to lose. Also, Ferguson Park, the production there of the park, while it's coming along, there's been a few hiccups. I've gotten involved in that, but I'm pleased to report that appears to be on schedule for opening, at least in part, later this year. Also in our district, we have a lot of trail access. For many of us, for decades, we've wanted clarification on trail access and preserving these sensitive lands. There is some construction going on now with scoping there at Death Smith's Canyon, and I'm getting involved to answering questions by a lot of concerned citizens. So we hope to get more clarification on legalities, not only pertaining to building there to the east of the top of the world Golden Hills area, but also the trailhead access and making sure we preserve access. I've been working on housing. This is a really important issue, not only in our city, but throughout Salt Lake County. Also, motorist noise, speed, and danger is constantly coming in front of me from my constituents, and I'm working on a number of things in that area, both with city staff and with the UTA. I serve on the UTA Local Advisory Council. But first and foremost, the mayor asked me to share what my 2 or 3 top priorities are for the remainder of the year. And so I will say that while we have many projects and priorities, because of the time-sensitive nature of the general plan update, I have selected key priorities therein to base a lot of my energy on in these next 4 months. Both our population and infrastructure here in Cottonwood Heights are gentrifying. This may be stating the obvious, but as we work on our general plan for the city, which is an ongoing process that'll well go into next year, the plan has historically focused on land use, growth and development, housing, transportation, economic development, parks, trails, open space, water, and more newly added sustainability. I think that public health and city infrastructure need to be main thrusts of that general plan. Why public health and infrastructure? Because I believe we need to maintain what we have and look after the health and well-being of our citizens first and foremost. We can support the local businesses we already have through heightened buy local and other efforts. Instead of a general plan that guides us toward growth and economic development, such as huge commercial hotels, office buildings, luxury apartments, and condo towers at the South Gravel Pit, we need to think about what is in the best interests of our people, the people who live here. Do we want more drive-through traffic associated with commercial build-out? There was a house fire in my district last month, and the closest fire station there on Wasatch Boulevard arrived, but they had to wait 7 minutes for the arrival of additional firefighter before they could go inside the house to save the woman who was trapped inside. That's a public safety issue. I'm going to be bringing that up. I would like our council to relook at that. And should there be a full complement of 4 firefighters at both fire stations in Cottonwood Heights? Infrastructure, The planning commissioner, Jessica Chappell, brought up the importance of disaster resiliency for our general plan, and the need to look at the condition of older houses related to seismic concerns. Do we have big expenditures coming up related to our culinary and water, so our culinary and irrigation water system? We know our storm drain system is intensively being worked over. What about our gas, electric, waste utilities? We need to plan and implement a technical communication system that includes, but is not limited to, fiber lines, and prioritizes a holistically planned, phased-in system for not only artificial intelligence and tech-related infrastructure, supporting public safety. That includes our parks, public places, roadways, and is integrated with the Cottonwood Heights Police Department and United Fire Authority. And where does our aging population go with their 3,000 plus square foot houses when they become too big? Where do we house young professionals, families, and frontline workers when the median house price now in Cottonwood Heights is $725,000 and apartment rentals are upwards of $2,500 a month? Are we fully auditing the existing residential and commercial makeup of our city and figuring out how to repurpose and redevelop in ways that meet our citizens' demand for walkability, safe and slower roadways, and smart strategic planning? With new city codes that assist developers to realize higher return on investment when they build smaller square footage, quality housing in which citizens can realize ownership instead of building luxury apartment rentals. Can we have numerous small green spaces and walkability and the best of the transit-oriented development, for instance, along Fort Union Boulevard, that respects surrounding communities? So as I wrap up, the compelling questions that beg our council to analyze new methods of adapting from the more consumptive practices of the 20th century and engage for an urbanizing of Cottonwood Heights, where we preserve green space, mature pine groves, protect our soil and air sheds, meet housing demand with smart strategic planning that keeps attainable housing, transit-oriented development, and movability within our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so my report real quickly. So like Councilmember Burrell mentioned, I serve on with him and our city manager on the Legislative Policy Committee. During this past legislative session, House Bill 440 was passed, which allocated some funding for some of the current cities that have homeless resource centers. Part of that bill also required every city within Salt Lake County to meet within the Conference of Mayors and to submit a location that could be considered as an overflow facility for homeless. Council member or city manager Tim Tingey and I found a location. We submitted it. It was not chosen. There's multiple reasons why Cottonwood Heights isn't really, we don't have the transit that's required. So it was eliminated fairly early on. I do want to recognize some of the other cities that did that stepped up and that are going to house overflow homeless people, and recognize and maybe mention to the council we might need to be looking at in the future at funding, at least participating funding wise in providing for homeless people, specifically into overflow shelters during the winter months. I am also a member of the Central Wasatch Commission, and they posted a notice from the U.S. Forest Service. The U.S. Forest Service is proposing changes to developed recreation fees for facilities under the Federal Lands Recreation Enhancement Act fee program. This includes Uinta, Wasatch, and Cache National Forest lands. So these fee changes include new, increase, and decrease at several fee sites. And what they are doing is they are seeking public comment on their fee changes. We have posted all of this information from the U.S. Forest Service on our website. So I would encourage anybody here or anybody looking at it to go to our website and look at the information. I'm going to give you just a couple of highlights. The Uinta Wasatch Cache National Forest has operated a recreational fee program since 1997, so it's been about 24 years. The fee program helps provide funds to operate the forest's challenging recreation program, to meet public expectations for recreation opportunities, and to address deferred maintenance. While the revenue derived from fees is a critical component, it's only part of a more comprehensive funding strategy, including appropriated dollars, grants, and other volunteer support. The forest encompasses 2.2 million acres. The forest receives 13 million visitors annually. The forest is an intensely used year-round destination. Recreation use and associated demands for amenities and opportunities continue to increase. Increased use is impacting the resource visitor experience and affecting the forest's capacity to manage a quality recreation program. One of the proposals coming forth with the fee program will be 3-day, 7-day, and annual passes for the U.S. Forest Service. And I encourage all of our citizens to go to our website, like I said, and look at what the U.S. Forest Service is proposing. Let me just, and I know I'm out of time, just really quickly. At our Legislative Policy Committee meeting yesterday, the executive director for the League of Cities and Towns, Cameron Dill, came up to Tim and I and said, you know, I was at Bywater Park for an activity this past week, and he said, wow, I understand why people want to live in Cottonwood Heights. We are lucky to live in the place that we do. Okay. Item 5.0, thank you, Council, for your reports. Item 5.0 is a citizen comment period. This is a time for citizens to address the council on whatever matters they desire. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. Please review the public comment procedures on the last page of tonight's agenda. If you haven't already filled out a speaker comment card, please do so and hand it to a staff member. When making citizen comments, we request that you speak into the microphone so that your comments can be recorded, that you give your name, and that you avoid insulting language or comments. The audience should avoid expressions of support or disagreement as well. The council is here to listen, but you shouldn't expect to engage in a back and forth dialogue. If you raise questions, staff will respond to you within a few business days. The first comment card that I have is for Mickey Harris. Hi, Mickey.
Hi, how's it going? Thank you for all your service. I realize you guys serve on a lot of committees, and it's a lot of time, and you don't get paid. But I am here to talk about Wasatch Boulevard. For me as a citizen, it's hard to hear, let's wait, or it's hard to hear, let's learn and make a decision later. It's not great peace of mind for me. Because I live up against Wasatch Boulevard, I kind of want to hear your confidence that this is actually what we want when we talk to UDOT. And this is what we're not willing to compromise on. And this is safety for your citizens. UDOT is great. I don't think they're the villains. I don't think there shouldn't be anything done with Wasatch. There needs to be improvements. I do believe they're doing their best. They're good people. Also, you guys are doing your best and you're doing your job. But I do feel as a citizen, it's hard for our voice to get heard. And it's only through you that we get heard. And sometimes I feel dismissed. Sometimes I feel like you're our only mouthpiece and that only bridge to UDOT on what's going to affect our city for years. So with that comes growth. Councilman Bracken, you brought up growth today. How are we growing? What is the data? We should know that. We should know how we want to grow. What's your vision? How does Wasatch want to look to you? And not just Wasatch. We've got Fort Union, Highland. How do we want to move people? And that's my biggest concern is if we're just moving cars, how it doesn't solve our problem, but how we move people will. Just today, I walk at 6 a.m. most Tuesdays and Thursdays with a group of moms. We all have 3 to 4 kids. I cannot tell you how many times someone crosses their car over to that shoulder lane right by 3500 East and Wasatch Boulevard. And that's my lane to walk. I don't have anywhere else to walk. Because of where I live, because it's an island, I have to do Wasatch Boulevard to get to a safe road like 3500 East. I have no other option. And UDOT needs to understand that. So how do we solve that? Is that a wait and see? Or is that, what do we do? Just in closing, I just have an assignment. Obviously, you're not in our district, but can I ask you to spend some time on Wasatch Boulevard? Look at the way people move. You will see people walking, cycling, moving in a variety of different ways. And that is also my college student who has to figure out how to get to the U. He's driving to the tracks. He's taking trucks up from Fashion Place Boulevard. So that's, hopefully I have your promise, correct? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mickey. I appreciate your passion, and I also thank you for being respectful. Jim McGauley, hopefully I said that right.
By coincidence, I'm going to also talk about Wasatch Boulevard. My backyard is on Wasatch Boulevard. So I see the traffic there every day. Somebody showed me this map a few weeks ago, which is UDOT's EIS, Environmental Impact Statement study. The part of the map on the left is from 2015. The part of the map on the right is their projection to 2050. What the map shows is the volume of traffic on Wasatch Boulevard in the different sections. It shows the traffic, it talks about the traffic in the peak PM period, so like 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock. So a 3-hour period along Wasatch there. If you just look at the part that says 14,000, that's the part just from Golden Hills down to the split, down south to the split. They say in 2015, there were 14,000 cars from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock on the average over the year. In 2050, 35 years down the road, they say the traffic in that section will be 19,000, a 45% increase. So when I saw this map, I talked to some of my neighbors who also face Wasatch, and they said, there's no way these numbers are right. We look at the traffic every day. So I bought a little hand clicker, and last week, every day of the week, I counted the cars in that section of the road. And if you look at page 2, so we've got the 2015 information that they have, and the current EIS statement is also using that same information from 2015. It has not been updated. So they say 14,000 cars in that section, 2015, projection to 2050, 19,000 cars. If you just extrapolate 2015 to today, seven years, there should be 15,000 cars going in that section in peak PM traffic. The actual number is 4,700. So instead of a 45% increase in the traffic, it's a 66% decrease. There's a 100% gap there. So there's something wrong. Either I got a really bad clicker that's 10,000 cars off in that time period, or the UDOT information is incorrect. Somebody connected me with Josh Vanjura a few weeks ago. I talked to him on the phone. He said they realized the volume is down, but he didn't know how much. I emailed him 3 questions, and that's on the 3rd page. He answered me his email response came this morning. I asked, how was the 2015 study done? And I thought it'd be electronic or something like that. It's apparently based on observed traffic counts, and it says it's average annual daily traffic, where the map actually says PM traffic. So there's a discrepancy there. 1 second. The second question I asked was, how is the 45% projected increase calculated? And he indicated it's the Wasatch Front Regional Council, which I don't know about and can look into. Third question to me was the most important. Are they using the same numbers now that they used in 2015? And his answer was yes. So despite the fact that I think there's a huge discrepancy in the numbers of the traffic along there, they're still using the same numbers. Our ask is that the city is proactive in approaching this aspect of the issue, because if there's any information that should be, that a widening of a road should be based on, it seems like it should be the volume of traffic. And if the volume is wrong, and way, way wrong, literally by tens of hundreds, thousands of cars in any one period, then it probably need to be looked into. And we'd like the city to be proactive in approaching this and in addressing this issue, particularly Mr. Weicker and Mr. Tingy and anybody else in the council. And if possible, we'd like some follow-up with you guys on this information. If there's any, one of my neighbors joked that if my numbers are right, the street actually should be narrowed rather than widened.
Do you know
Yeah.
by chance the date that they observed traffic in 2015?
No, I don't.
I guess
Well,
that
they-
would probably be a factor, but we will look into it.
I think there is some other information. Talking
If
to
I,
them, we
if
got-
I may, we do know, Mayor, if I may, we do know that UDOT is factoring for commuter traffic. This is not a ski-driven expansion of Wasatch Boulevard. It's driven by commuter numbers. And the commuter numbers on a Monday through Friday night should remain pretty much the same, whether it's winter or summer.
The only time we ever see any backup there is on literally a few, maybe a half dozen powder days during the year. And it's not a Wasatch problem, it's a canyon problem. So it's not widening Wasatch isn't going to help that problem.
Thank you, Jim.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person is Leslie Kovacs. Kovacs or Kovac?
It's Kovacs. I'm following a theme here. My discussion is also on Wasatch Boulevard. I've been a resident here of 38 years here in Cottonwood Heights. As we've grown in Cottonwood Heights, there's been a lot of changes to the city and the traffic patterns. It is my understanding that there's been a traffic study requested for the Canyon Center, and it's been completed by Horrocks for the discussion of the development, the further development of the Canyon Center. My curiosity is, has there been any information gathered on the number of accidents on Wasatch Boulevard and Fort Union? And was that factored into this study? So following my curiosity, I contacted Utah State Department of Public Safety and Highway Safety office, and they quickly received my information. They responded to my request, which was how many accidents occurred in the intersection of Wasatch Boulevard and Fort Union between June 1st, 2021 and June 30th, 2022. I was quickly informed that the information was given to me only what was reported at the time I requested the report. The area I requested, as I said, was Wasatch Boulevard and Fort Union. Here's what I found out. Over 60% of the accidents were during daylight hours, and the weather was clear. 2 of the reported accidents involved possible injuries. 1 involved possible minor injuries. 2 of the crashes were speed related. 14 of the crashes were other vehicles. The one thing I haven't told you is how many crashes there totally were reported. Remember, there could be many more reported in the time frame. 19. That's more than 1 a month. We have a problem. This data seems to be very relevant when we're looking how to improve road design within our city, how to address safety, how to improve our city as it exists. It seems to me that accident information should be requested and shown to the city, shown to all of our council, shown to the public. should not be overridden, should not be excused, and should be reviewed by our city planning, our engineers, and our development prior to making relevant decisions that will increase traffic, increase speed, and danger within our city. If anybody within the city would like some help on how to get this information, I'll be more than glad to help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. The next person is Jennifer Cotton. Pronounce that correctly.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Jennifer Cotton. Thank you. A few weeks back, I requested a map for bikeability of Cottonwood Heights. And when I got it, it was clear to me that it's not a bikeable city. And if you've ever been on a bike, you know that. But I thought maybe I was missing something when I requested the map. From the map, it was hard to tell where complete bike lanes are. And it was also hard to find neighborhood bypass routes. I would like to be an avid biker, but I'm not really willing to risk life and limb to do so. So we moved here after living in Europe, where we walked and biked everywhere. And when I moved here, I was so excited to be close to shopping and things that we could just do like as a family, and strapped my baby in her baby carrier and started biking off and realized this is not a great idea. So, I mean, of course we bike in neighborhoods and stuff, but it wasn't like we could bike around the city to do things. Europe is famous for its walkability, bikeability, but Amsterdam is iconic. And in researching cities and bikeability, in the 70s, Amsterdam was a car-centric city. But it wasn't until policy changed and said, hey, we want this to be a bikeable city, did it become what it is today. It is important to note that biking infrastructure has to come before the bikers do. A really good example of this is Macon, Georgia. They put in 3 non-continuous bike lanes and said, hey, why aren't people biking? But when they added 8 miles of pop-up bike lanes, bikeability or bikers increased by 800%. I would love to see that in our city. There is strength in numbers. When you have more bikers, it's safer for bikers. Biker ridership is a function of being of the city basically investing in us. This investment will lead to better public health. The first year of someone biking to work, they lose an average of 16 pounds. That saves you money. Second one is social equality. You can imagine if you have a job at Smith's and you're paying $5 a gallon for gas, that's a stress if you don't live in the neighborhood. Economic competitiveness. People want to live and shop in this beautiful town. And if we have more bike lanes, you're going to draw people in, and your real estate values will increase. As a city, of course, you have to also weigh the risks. I mean, people get hurt biking, and sometimes that liability can come to the city. But a really interesting study, and I'm almost done in Great Britain said there's a 20-to-1 health to risk, basically health to risk ratio. So I would love to see you all out on your bikes. Let's do it together. Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer. Fritz Wood.
Hello, my name's Fritz. I happen to be Ellen's neighbor. I've been a Cottonwood Heights resident since 1980, and I appreciate the efforts you all are doing to make our community a better place to live. We're living in a time of a major climate crisis, and I don't think the citizens nor the city of Cottonwood Heights are doing much to help with this issue. Salt Lake County approved an idle-free ordinance in 2011, limiting idling to 2 minutes or less. Last year, I contacted Cottonwood Heights Police after multiple encounters with the hired snow removal crew of my neighbors who leave their vehicles running for 30 minutes or more. It took Cottonwood Heights Police 6 weeks to return my phone call. And in that phone call, the officer said he had no idea about a 2-minute idle ordinance. We need to educate the community about the effects of idling and how it contributes to poor air quality. and set a precedence for other communities to follow. Every drive-through, be it a restaurant, a bank, a grocery store where you pick up your groceries, or what have you, need to have idle-free signage, just as they do at the pickup and drop-offs at many of the schools. We need to call upon the ski resorts to greatly encourage idle-free, as the hundreds of cars wait to enter the canyons when they're closed. Every Cottonwood Heights newsletter needs to have idle-free information posted in it and sent out, along with their website. And the Cottonwood Heights police need to be informed and aware of and follow themselves in enforcing an idle-free zone. We all have to go to and from, but we don't have to idle our cars when we're doing it. The facts are that 30 seconds of idling uses more fuel than restarting your engine. 2 minutes of idling is enough fuel to travel 1 mile. An hour of idling your car burns up to one gallon of fuel. Thank you for your time and consideration to this fairly simple solution to a very complex problem. Certainly not something that you can change overnight, but simply educating our people will go a long ways. Can I give each of you a flyer?
Are you done speaking? Okay, I just didn't want to interrupt you.
Thank you, Fritz. Go ahead.
I would note, because I have gotten over the last number of years some grief occasionally upon it, but just out our window right here, the funding source for the roundabout that is getting closer to completion, and I can't wait till it actually is done, was for congestion mitigation. The entire and air quality. When you go through and count the number of vehicles that travel through the intersection and the amount of time that they do not idle waiting at the lights that were there, the gross amount is a little over 100 hours per day. And so I think that's a significant win on the side of removing emissions from our local area. I didn't honestly believe that number the first time I heard it, so much like, now I can't see very that. I spent the last 4 years or so, because I live right at this intersection, looking at how many cars were waiting at those lights time after time after time. And it's pretty close, but I do think that on that specific item, removing 100 hours of idling as of Monday from our local area it was a significant improvement.
Thank you, Councilmember Bracken. Thank you, Fritz. So Will McCarville.
Never fails. Every time I get up here, I get coffee. I'm Will McCarville. I live at 3607 Golden Hills. Been there since the mid-80s. Some at the top of the world neighborhood. So several neighbors in my neighborhood of top of the world commented to me on seeing digging in Deaf Smith Canyon. I personally saw several building foundations or basement excavations in Deaf Smith Canyon near the fork with Little Willow Canyon. These are on several sensitive land overlay maps, rockfall, debris flow, and slope stability, so the existing version of SLED's ordinance applies. Since the current staff has shown a repeated inability to follow the SLED's ordinance, I need to be assured that they're finally following it correctly. I want a meeting with staff to see how they are following SLED's process. I look forward to a date and time to review pertinent documentation regarding compliance with SLED's. I would also like to have attendance with the city attorney and city officials. I feel that all work in Deaf Smiths needs to be halted until compliance to the ordinance is demonstrated. What I saw up there is not disturbance to look at the problems, the dangers. They look like full-born excavation for basements, and I think my sense is that the gun has been jumped, that there were some steps that haven't been done because the developers is clearly moving a lot of rocks up there. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. So we've had a bunch of comments about this specific issue. So I'm gonna actually have Tim Tingy, our city manager, tell you exactly what's happening and if that's okay and what's been done to this point.
So I'll just be brief on this, and I don't want to get into too much in depth because there's a lot of issues related to this. There were lots that were approved prior to Cottonwood Heights being a city. It was approved in the county for, and those lots are entitled. Part of what is going on up there is the geotech work and preparation of them looking at submitting future permits. There's no building occurring at this time, but it's part of a geotech process. We've had our geotech person involved in this. Our design review committee has evaluated this and provided all the details of how the SLEDS ordinance has to be applied, but they're doing testing and information in preparation of geotech to bring forward when they apply for a building permit. We're happy to talk with people as we need to, but the bottom line is there's no building occurring up there. It's part of the geotech process. And that's as simple as I want to get right now related to that. But we're very much aware of it. We've been out on inspections on it. We've had and are having our geotech person, our consultant, evaluating this regularly. And so we are addressing it.
Thank you, Tim. So Randy Whitehead.
I'm Randy Whitehead. I'd like to just make a couple of comments. The first one is I loved what you did with the landscaping awards. I thought that was really impactful and powerful. I thought that was fantastic. Sends a great message. I love that. Secondly, I used to live where Danish Road comes to the intersection of Wasatch Boulevard. I lived there for 2 years, and listening to the comments of everyone on Wasatch Boulevard, it brought back a horrible feeling that I had when I lived there. My daughter drove out onto Wasatch Boulevard and got in a serious accident. And I always felt that it was dangerous. And when I moved away, I felt better. So I wasn't planning on making any comments, but those other comments kind of hit home with me. So I really think we should do something and influence UDOT to make a decision to make it safer as soon as we could, because we all know it takes a long time to get it on the books, get something happening. But I want to talk about the city council meeting, the work meeting that we had last month. It was discussed how we could get our residents group in District 3 involved with the Planning Commission and Planning Council to help craft the modifications to the city master plan. As you know, our group has been very diligent and studied what was needed and so forth, brought in experts, has done their homework. So it was suggested by you, Mayor, that we should enable some collaboration with this group, which was really good. And then there was some additional discussion that it would be unfair to let one citizens group give discussion. So then the comments were, oh, okay, let's have a town meeting with each of the districts so that it wasn't unfair just for one district to share ideas for the master plan. So then today in the work meeting, it came back that the idea was to have a third-party consultant come in and structure it. And I believe that comment and that direction was a direct result of Dan Mills, who's on the Planning Commission, the leader, when his comments were such that, oh, it would be a train wreck to listen to the citizens. The residents, they don't know what they're talking about. They'll only complain. They won't do any good. You have to structure it. You can't listen to what the residents want. And so the proposal today was to make it structured, make it one-sided, make it so it not being a collaborative process, but one-sided, to say, yeah, we listen to the group, but our group wants to collaborate, to work back and forth. Now, Mayor Wikers and City Council, you've worked hard over the last months to send the message that you care about the citizens and the residents and their input, and you want their involvement. I ask you to reconsider that process and find out how the city can truly collaborate and let the citizens help be involved in creating a document as important as the city master plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Appreciate it. Nancy Hardy.
Hi, Mayor
Hi.
and City Council. First of all, I have some comments, but I haven't updated myself with everything on the website. So if it's in there and I've missed it, I apologize for that. I know the general plan update is looking for public engagement to help with that. And over the years, there have been adopted and special plans that have included a lot of citizens in those meetings and time and good ideas and the charrette. And I just hope that some of those plans and studies will be incorporated as well, because there's some great ideas in all of those studies and a lot of citizens time, mine included. I was in a few of those. And one of them, the Fort Union Master Plan, has some really good ideas too, to without widening the street, they were able to make wider sidewalks and safe crosswalks and maybe some shuttles going up and down, easy on and off, and keep the main traffic on 215 and have people come down Fort Union that want to shop and eat and, So that was one thought. And then also those plans have the dates when they were adopted or their special studies. And back in March, I asked if there's any update on some of those plans. And I haven't noticed if there are, but I was just wondering if they could maybe incorporate something on the website by the plans and say, this is what we've adopted in this particular plan and at this date, or, just to bring everybody up to speed. And also on those plans, they're so long, 50 pages, 100 pages, and they're very detailed, and maybe they could do a quick, short and sweet summary of each plan, just 1 page long, so citizens could read it and say, oh, this is what they're going to do, and just make it easy for a resident to read all of the plans in an hour, or because it takes a lot of effort to read everything. And also those plans, they don't have a date of when a possible, let's try to work on this by such and such a date. There's a plan 2015, 2016, and it has all these great ideas, but it doesn't say, well, we're going to try to implement it by 2050 or, something. So I think that's everything.
Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate that. And I will just say the general plan update process was kind of put on hold. I don't know if that's the correct way to phrase it. We basically decided that we needed to slow down the process, and one of the reasons that we decided to do town halls is so that we didn't feel like we were getting perhaps the input from our residents that we wanted. So as far as when everything is happening, it's kind of at a standstill because we're still trying to figure all of that out. So, but I appreciate that, Nancy. And if I didn't answer in something correctly, I'll have our the city manager reach out to you. Okay, great. Okay, more than just the general plan. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Okay, the next comment is from Tim John, I think it is.
All right, thanks, Mayor, for this opportunity to speak. This is my first and hopefully last chance to speak before a city council during my entire life. But I feel this is an important issue, and I'm going to be a recurring theme on this Wasatch Boulevard issue. We live 30 yards from Wasatch Boulevard in between Big and Little Cottonwood Canyons. In that time, I love the comments about the bike and all that, but I know of at least 3 bike accidents, one of which resulted in serious injury. I also know of at least 3 incidents of cars leaving the road and coming into our yards. I have 2 that are into backyards and 1 that came through a hedge, through a sidewalk into the front yard of my neighbor right next to me. And I just cringed as that happened. As you can imagine, how long is it going to be before there's a person on the other side of that hedge resulting in serious injury? We need to do something. Another thing that hasn't been mentioned is it is becoming more and more difficult to get onto Wasatch with these high speeds, to the point where I fear, and I think I heard comments about an accident coming onto Wasatch. And, you know, that plays right into this idea of danger. Over and over, it's dangerous. One thing that hasn't been mentioned, people sometimes try to subvert getting onto Wasatch or having to use Wasatch, and they're coming onto our streets. And they are flying on our streets, and their pets and kids and us who all have the potential of getting injured. I attended the work session. I love to hear the thoughts about ideas. I hope that we can find solutions that work. Putting a speed limit out is nice, and I'd absolutely support that. But things that sort of force reductions in speed. So things like roundabouts, things like electronic speeds or monitoring, or I don't profess to know the answers. I'm just saying I hope that we can come up with some great solutions. And I'll just say change is constant, and I am a strong believer that growth is good. I did cringe when I heard the word freeway and Wasatch mentioned during the work session. Does that not begin to destroy the essence, beauty, and attractiveness of what Cottonwood Heights is? Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And I really hope that that's not your last time before the council. You're welcome anytime. So, Kevin Dolan.
Evening. Thanks for letting us step up here and throw some comments here at you. I've got guess what I'm talking about? Wasatch and biking again. I know you've seen that a few times, but it's a big deal. I'm a former Sandy resident since '85, so I've been in Cottonwood Heights since '18 at one of your favorite developments, Giverny, right down here in Wasatch, right? That's not what my comment is about. It's about Wasatch all along from pretty much 7200 to 9400. And as well on Danny. So I've been biking these areas like a lot of people here for 30 plus years. And I'll just go everywhere. Draper, the zoo, the Capitol, just anywhere. Jordan River Trail. But it's kind of, I worked with Ellen, so she's been very responsive in trying to resolve some of these. The town halls are great. We're always attending those. Those things help out because I learn more than I end up contributing. But my concern, first of all, is those bike lanes on Wasatch. I used to think that was a good thing, those bike lanes. Those aren't bike lanes, those are death traps. I mean, all of it is it's a few feet off to the side. I thought, oh, this is good. I found out later on, those are actually UDOT corrections for drivers in case they kind of text or something. And as I drive in there all the time, I'll watch somebody ahead of me and they're always kind of wandering into that bike lane. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's my lane when I'm biking. So anything we can do, and I know that's the plan, but anything we can do to make a dedicated bike lane and walk lane. There are no kids who bike on Wasatch. And I wouldn't send anybody out there who's not like my age closer to the end of the beginning because that's scary stuff. So I always time it, of course, like anybody does, Sundays, middays, anytime when there's not traffic, because that's very scary. And then the same thing on Danish, there are certain parts there where you just can't walk without running into cars. That's just the way it is. So I would just like to keep pushing, and I know you guys are working to that. I'll be happy to work with Ellen to, to be on committees or anything to help out, just to kind of guide that. Other areas are much better. So I go to Salt Lake City, and it just seems like it's much safer and easier, whether it's Parley's Trail. Draper's done a great job. Certainly the Jordan River Trail is nice. And I haven't seen any changes in Cottonwood Heights on these major areas for those 30 plus years. And it's like, come on, let's get on this. Let's do this. So, but thanks again.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. So we have a comment online, it looks like, from Melissa Fields, if we'll unmute her. Hi, Melissa.
Hi there.
Hi.
Can you hear? I'm Melissa Fields. I've lived in Cottonwood Heights since 2010. I'm sorry for not attending in person, but I'm going on a guided climbing trip next week. And if I show up with COVID, then I can't go. So I'm kind of avoiding crowds for the next little while. But I wanted to talk about, to echo Will McCarville's comments about my concerns about Deaf Smith Canyon. And I have spoken with Ellen, who is my district representative, and I've sent a note to you, Mayor, and thanks to you both for getting back with me. But I would echo Will's concerns that the level of disturbance looks, I mean, I'm not an engineer or an architect or a builder for that matter, looks closer to foundation excavation than any kind of like geological survey to me. And, I just, in that, so I'm curious to know, like, in the event that the developer is not granted a building permit, who would be responsible for the remediation of the disturbance that's gone on up there? And I also just wanted to ask the council to perhaps put a little bit more urgency on approving or voting on a riparian ordinance. Deaf Smith Canyon is one of the few waterways within Cottonwood Heights city limits that's not developed. And I think that we should make every effort we can to preserve the riparian habitat there, as well as riparian habitats elsewhere in the city. And then I also, and I mentioned this to Ellen and to you, Mayor, just the desire of me and I think many other people in the city to maintain trail access into Deaf Smith Canyon, as well as along the alignment for the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. I've found articles in the Deseret News as far back as 1990 with people voicing their concerns over maintaining access to Deaf Smith Canyon. And I know Council Member Peterson and we've talked about how, I mean, I think he's hiked up in this area for most of his life. And I think many other people enjoy going up in that area. And I do know that there has been, there were several citizens that submitted affidavits to City Attorney Topham, talking about their years-long use of Deaf Smith Canyon. And then also, I just wanted to hope that the city will work to preserve the alignment of the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. I've been on the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Committee in Cottonwood Heights since it was formed in 2016. And just based on surveys and from my time on that committee, there's a lot of people within Cottonwood Heights and I think elsewhere who are interested in seeing the Bonneville Shoreline Trail a reality east of our city. In fact, I was heavily involved with preserving the open space at the mouth of Little Cottonwood Canyon. And I mean, that campaign was titled Cottonwood Heights BST. And so it's easy to assume that many people who gave to that campaign and helped preserve that 28 acres of open space at the mouth of Little Cottonwood are interested in seeing the Bonneville Shoreline Trail alignment preserved and eventually be built. But again, I thank you for the attention from Ellen and Mayor Wickers on this issue up to this point, and then Tim Tingey's comments during the meeting. And I'll be anxious to hear about how this issue progresses moving forward.
Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate that. And we're grateful for Melissa. She does a great job on our Parks, Trails and Open Space Committee, and we're grateful for the time that she contributes for that. I don't see, do you have something?
I do. There were two written comments that were submitted. I forwarded them to the council, so you have those and they are going to be included in the record. One is from Audrey Pines, and her comments relate to concerns about or her opposition to the gondola. In addition to that, concerns with speeds on Wasatch Boulevard and safety for pedestrians and biking individuals. There's also a comment from John Kennington. Once again, I submitted that to the city council. It's part of the record that I'm reading in right now. He had concerns related to or advocating that Cottonwood Heights still maintain opposition to the gondola as well. That proposal, and also the concerns, he expressed concerns about enhanced bus alternative. And then also had comments about the Horrocks traffic study for the Fort Union Wasatch Boulevard area needs to be fully discussed and vetted with the public before implementation. So those were the comments. Once again, all the council members have these comments. They're part of the record now as part of the public as well.
Thank you, Tim. So I am now going to close without seeing any other comments, the citizen comment period. Item 6.0 on our agenda tonight are quarterly reports, and we're going to begin with our finance department and Scott Jurgis, our finance and administrative services director, who will give us a report.
I'm like the Rodney Dangerfield of finance directors. I get no respect. Yeah, I tell you, it's crushing. Not really. I kind of sympathize and understand. So, let me share my screen. All right.
Hey, Scott, before you get started, how do you feel about Wasatch Boulevard?
I think it's a street.
I'm just teasing you.
And it starts with a W. So I'm giving you an update on finances as of June for the city, and kind of where we are to date. Starting with sales tax, we've actually received sales tax revenues through May. We have not received June. That will happen in about a week. It could be Friday, but probably more likely Monday when we receive that. And so we'll see where that gets to. But year to date, through the end of May, we're sitting at $7.9 million of revenue. So we're already, I think we're about $8,000 higher than we were last year before we get June's revenue. We had put in our projection for our budget, or when we put together our new budget, about $8.5 million, which means we'd only need to receive about $600,000 to meet that projection that we had put together. 2 years ago, our June receipts were $662,000, and last year our receipts were $843,000. So I feel very confident that we'll be able to meet that and meet our projection, possibly some additional funds. So that's kind of where we sit right now. We'll probably be in the 8.5, 8.6 range when we get those revenues, and a week, and we'll know that where we are. Let's see, moving on to the county option sales tax, and this is a transit-oriented sales tax that was voted in, started in fiscal year 2020. This revenue has a little bit different tax base, so it doesn't totally mimic what our sales tax come in, but it slightly mimics how that goes. And we're sitting at $702,000 year to date, and we typically receive about $60,000 per month, give or take a little bit. So if we received another $60,000 on this, we'd be at $760,000 range. That's quite a jump from last year when we had $620,000 as our revenue. So I'm not exactly sure why this is trending up. Not all communities participate in this, and maybe communities that are having higher sales taxes in a general sense, are participating in this, which then wouldn't have the effect of, diversifying and have some of our sales taxes off to communities that have more population than they have sales taxes. But I'm not sure all communities that participate in this, but we saw quite a large increase in this year over year. Our energy tax had been hovering in the just under $2 million range in 2020 and 2019. There was a rate change that occurred then, and then we went up into the little bit better than 2,125,000, and it looks like we actually did end this. This is a full year of collections at 2,167,000. So a little bit higher than we initially projected that would probably be. Just as a note, our budget for the current year was 1,950,000, and for next year, what did I put as our budget? We have 2,200,000. So we're much closer to where we see this kind of trending. We might have that budget set just a teeny bit high, but not tons to worry about. And the other budgets were probably set just a teeny bit low. So between the two of them, I think we're okay in where we've set the budget in future years.
When you say rate change, what do you mean?
So this is a percentage driven tax. So when either if they have a rate
there
change
was a
in
rate
gas
change
or if
from-
they have a rate
alright.
change in
Not the tax.
power, not the tax rate, then we will receive slightly more revenue from that because the base will increase. And so that occurred back in that time frame because we were looking at it at first, not figuring out why we had this sudden, increase of about $135,000. And then in some research, there was a rate change, and I actually don't recall whether it was a power or a gas rate change, but there was a slight rate change back then. Moving on to the cable TV tax. This tax has been relatively stable, 325,000 in 2019, 323 in 2020, 313 in 2021, and we went up just a little bit this year to $322,000. Our budget was $310,000. We were kind of thinking it might be on a slight downward trajectory. One reason why this could have gone up is with COVID and not being able to say go to movies or other, things like that. Maybe more people opted into some cable television options that would bring in some more revenue into the city, but we're not really sure why that is. We don't really have the data behind it to really understand that, but it's not a huge change. Our budget on this for the next year, we actually had set at $300,000. So we'll see how that goes, but we might be slightly under budgeted in that, but not in a drastic way. All right, Class C roads funds. This is through 12 periods. So, and because of how this one goes, we have to take the revenues that actually we received during the year. And so that's why our last revenues that we receive are through April. So this, when we get May and June's data, that goes into our current fiscal year because of how this revenue is outlined and stuff to us. But if you look at this in the past several years, we've been, I'll call this relatively stable, 1,221,000, 1,290,000, 1,247,000. Hasn't really fluctuated a lot, about a net of $70,000 of fluctuation within all those years and everything. Get to this year, we got 1,410,000. Now, gas prices don't affect this because this is a cents per gallon kind of a thing, which kind of really shocked me with gas prices being high to see that we would receive more revenue from this source than we had in the past.
Doesn't that mean people have to be driving more?
It does. And is that because people couldn't fly and therefore they were driving? I don't know. You look at the trends throughout and you can see that in any given month, we were higher than any given, any 2-month period, actually, is how they remit to us. We were higher than any of the given prior years. So I'm not exactly sure what's driving that, but it has to be the quantity of fuel that's being utilized is going up for some reason or another. I don't know why. Again, we don't get a lot of data to be able to, justify that. In my mind, I thought this was going to be at least flat, if not slightly down, and it fooled me. So,
Scott, I've got a question.
Mhm.
Does anybody ever analyze that?
So the state tax commission is the ones who make the distributions and get the data. This kind of goes into a little bit of their there's secret stuff where, you know, we can't disclose a lot of data about like sales taxes and so on and so forth. So I've never really made an attempt to dig into this and try and get information on this, but we aren't given any information to outline, you know, what this is and where it came from. Because diesel fuel does get a little bit higher taxes on it than gasoline does, but I really don't know the dynamic, you know, and I can't imagine we had a huge shift from gasoline vehicles to diesel vehicles. Maybe it's commercial traffic, I'm not exactly sure, but you know, there's obviously been a big shift, you know, about $150,000 increase in that year over year, which is bigger than we've seen in the past 3.
So just to be clear, is this a compilation of the whole state, everything, and then we get divvied out from that? Is that
I
right?
believe that is how it works. I believe that they do it like that and then send it to us based on our share of population to the whole state. I believe that is how it is. It could be on number of registered vehicles in that area compared to the whole state, but without us not being a fast growing community, you would think a community such as like Harriman that is growing very fast and probably adding more vehicles would be the recipient of more of those funds. And, you know, they're going to grow both in population and in vehicles. So I'm not exactly sure why we're seeing such good results in this. From a financial perspective, it was shocking to me to see it come in this high. So, but I'll make an attempt to see. Dave is our main contact with the state tax commission. I'll see if he can reach out and see if we can glean any kind of information, because I don't really understand why it was so good. So, by the way, on this one, our budget for the next year is $1,250,000. If it stays like this, that's going to end up being $150,000 greater than what we have budgeted. But our budget's in line with what we've seen in the last several years, so I'm not sure what to do with that. So anyhow, hold on. Don't close. Okay. Our general fund expenditures. So after we had adjusted the budget for the last several times of the year, our net budget was $19,822,000 for expenditures. In addition to that, there's some transfers out that amount to, I can't remember the amount, like 5.7 million, no, 5.9 million. And that makes up our net, if you will, expenditures, because I kind of count transfers out as an expenditure to the general fund. We spent so far to date $18,954,000, and that is roughly $800,000 or sorry, $900,000 less than our budget. From a percentage perspective, that represents about a 4% under expend, and we're probably targeting more like a 3% under expend. But there are 2 items that kind of go into this. One is we put in place the local business grant program that we put $200,000 into that's going through our community and economic development department. And that didn't take off and finish and pay out during our last fiscal year, and we'll get rebudgeted for the current fiscal year because they just didn't get everything in place to be able to do that then. So that's about $200,000. And then there's about $130,000 or so that's related to our door lock and badge project that we're doing that was delayed due to just a flat lack of being able to get the materials that we needed to get on that one. We couldn't get computer stuff. We couldn't get, chips and other things that they needed in order to get that. Both of those items, so that's about $330,000 will carry over into this year. When you take that into account, we're more in line of about a 3% under expend, which is kind of that sweet spot of where we want to be from an under expend standpoint. So I think overall, when you look at where we are and everything, don't be alarmed that we're under expending our budget at the rate that we are. It's about where we need to be. I've talked in the past that if I gave each of you $1 and said, go to say a nickel store and try and spend it, but you couldn't add any of your own funds into that, you'd come back with a few pennies left because you couldn't spend it all. And that's kind of how we have to operate, because we can't spend more than our budget that we have. If we have $1 for our budget, we can't spend $1.01 or $1.02. We got to spend, 99, 98, 97, something like that. And so as we're projecting forward, we have to have a little bit of cushion to be able to land that budget so that we don't run into problems with how the state statute reads with our expense budget and so on and so forth on that. So anyhow, overall, I'm actually very pleased with this. Again, I think that this will probably put us for the end of the year at about $9.5 million, give or take, for our ending fund balance, and that's estimating a $750,000 final month sales tax revenue. We'll have to kind of see what that really does before we really get there. And then we'll have to take out, the amounts for our 6% that we reserve, plus for the compensated absence, and those are still kind of in process. in terms of
Percentage
that.
would that be, Scott?
If just using our compensated absence from the prior year, it would put us really close to the 35%, maybe even 36%, which it's okay if your actuals pop above there. You just then have to have a way to bring it back down. Our budget anticipates using some fund balance as we go into next year, so that's not a big concern for me. And so I'm not worried that we'll have, problems, because our ending fund balance for, well, I say next year, it's the current year that we're actually in, we will be below 35%. So.
Great, thank you. Any
Yep.
questions, from the council?
I had a quick question. Going back to the sales tax trend, it looks like we're on our way to ending the year well over $8 million in sales tax. And as I do just real basic math on that, so it looks like compared from this 2019 figure up to 2022, it looks like about 21%, or very basically 7% annually. Do we have a reason to believe that this trend will continue?
I don't think it'll continue at the rate it has in the last 2 years. We were about a 17% growth rate from 2020 to 2021. This year is trending in the 13-ish% range. We'll see kind of where that all ends up. I don't think it will continue at that rate, but I also don't think it's going to drop into, I'll call it a, recessionary tax rate. If I was guessing, if you go before that from 2020 on back and you look at our average annual increase, it's in the 4 to 5% range. I think we could be slightly better than that, but not a ton, maybe, 6%, something like that. And we set our budget at $8.8 million for the current year that we're in. I think we'll land last year, somewhere between 8.5, 8.6 range. And so I don't think, we'll probably beat that 8.8, but not by a ton. It'll be a lot closer to what we have budgeted now, if I was guessing,
Scott, thank you.
yes.
Thank you, Scott. So there can be a little bit of movement in or fuzziness in numbers month to month, but so the month of May, you do want to be aware that it was the only month of the year that we were year over year under the previous May's numbers for sales tax. So that could be an indicator of consumer spending, recessionary pressures. And so the numbers that will come out this week are really important to look at. And we're hoping that they're what Scott was mentioning. I will just say anecdotally, boy, we're blessed in Cottonwood Heights that we do have some good revenue streams. The mayor of Bluffdale was telling me Bluffdale hosted a conference of mayors, and they paid for a lunch, and they had to do a budget amendment and paid for that lunch. So yeah, they are not in the
How
same
was the
position that
lobster?
we are. It was Subway, Scott. So yeah. No. Well, thank you, Scott.
Yes.
Appreciate your time. Yep. So next up, we're going to invite our assistant fire chief for United Fire Authority, Riley Pilgrim, for his quarterly. Thanks, Riley.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to be up here. If I can do this. All right, so the data I'll be sharing tonight is from April 1st to June 30th. So just our last quarter. Let's go through these kind of brief. And if you have questions, feel free to ask. There's one place I'll elaborate that I kind of did some research that I just found interesting. So looking back across again, when I get the reports, we go back quarters and years and just to see where we are. And right now, we're looking pretty much where we usually are at Cottonwood Heights. Might actually even be a little bit lower than our normal call volume. You'll see that in our next chart here. But 518 incidents between the two stations or within Cottonwood Heights City, right? 192 of those dispatch as the lights and sirens. And again, as we've shared, the captains, officers have the discretion on upgrading those calls once they hear the detail. This only is 100% based off of dispatch. Dispatch hears something, but when our captains get additional information, they make that decision if they need to go quicker or not. But that makes up about 37% of the calls in Cottonwood Heights are being dispatched in that fashion. Kind of like I shared, when I look back at the numbers, we're actually even a little bit lower from 2021, but everything's looking, again, not too unusual for this time of year for stuff that's happening with the fire service. This one is one that stood out to me when I looked at this and saw we had 8 structure fires. Vehicle fires and vegetation fires, those are pretty much, we expect those. Those could be a lot of different things. So I kind of dug into the structure fires because I was curious about that. It seemed a little high for what I recollect happening and even just in general for a quarter. When I dug into that too, those are actually what we'd probably call legitimate fires where the crew showed up and there's fire coming out of a building or inside the home. One was in a kitchen where the kitchen was involved. The other one was a garage. And both of those were actually dealt with the first arriving crew before it became a bigger problem. So fully involved garage fire, the crew took care of that. And then the crew arrived in an apartment complex where the kitchen fire when they arrived on scene. And just like I say, the first responding crew is actually able to deal with the scene and not required additional assistance beyond that. The other 6, which I found to be interesting, of the other 6, 4 of those are also related to cooking, whether it was just food on a stove that was forgotten, something in an oven, microwave, improper containers, whichever. And so that kind of jogs, some thought, and perhaps one of our next messages is just cooking and being safe. And that time of year, we're looking at Thanksgiving and all that, which it's hard to say that we're almost there, but we're there. That's a big problem for us that time.
Can I ask, is that, where those households were, there were elderly people? Like, is this somewhat a gentrification?
I can look into that to find out.
I mean,
the data I pulled was just really superficial. We can dig in and find out more. A lot of that too is on us, depending on what the captains document or the firefighters on scene. But it was enough for me to kind of be insightful that might be something to address, just in
was the source of the Leon Walker fire, was that source ever determined?
I don't have that information. It may have been. I can check with our investigators as well, just due to the time of day and all that. There's, definitely it's a unique circumstance, but stuff happens too. And so I know they've looked into that, and I can definitely find out and share that if it's available. So, but outside of this, nothing that really shook me, right? But something that I think we can address with just some education and messaging. Medical calls, our top EMS dispatches are kind of typical falls and sick people, kind of make up the bulk of what we respond to. And then as been shared, traffic incidents, minor, major, doesn't differentiate in here, but quite a few over that quarter. You're looking at about 10 a month that we're going to. Imagine, PD's going to a few more than we are. So again, it just highlights it's busy. There's a lot of commuting, and that's pretty standard. And then we deal with a lot of these as well, unintentional detectors such as false alarms, but dead batteries, someone pulling the fire alarm in a building, whichever that is. And a lot of public service, a lot of those are opening doors or changing batteries or helping people with different tasks that they may not have the equipment or tools or ability to take care of on their own. Look at these, our numbers are still looking pretty good. Cottonwood Heights resources, 110 and 116, you're covering the majority of the calls within the city. So, we're looking at about almost 88% there of most of the calls being handled with our own resources, which is awesome. And it also piques my curiosity. I think we'll talk about in a second, just when we do get a fire, since you are using what we call AVL. So it's basically dispatch on all the fire trucks in the valley. We have a GPS unit. And so when we're out and about, we're at the grocery store, we're driving through a neighborhood, we're coming back from the hospital, whatever it is, if there's a house fire or medical call, something comes in, typically the heavy apparatus, so the engine, ladder truck, will be dispatched off of proximity, not home station. The ambulance is typically dispatched out of their station. But the engines, the heavy apparatus are dispatched with whatever's closer. And so sometimes when you do see another unit on a call here, that like, why are they here? Why, it could be because they're passing through, they went to the store, they're on another call. It might have just literally been feet closer on a GPS unit than another apparatus. And it's actually what we've determined to be best overall fire service delivery for the valley and our communities, is just getting the closest unit there possible. They'll have a paramedic, will have EMTs, they'll have qualified people, then the ambulance will be shortly behind them. And it's worked out. It's had a lot of positive feedback, and there's some people who still kind of like to see their engines in their cities. But our goal really is to get someone there to help you as quick as possible. They don't really tell us it doesn't matter who's there, but we just want somebody to get help. So,
Mayor, may I ask a question related to that?
Absolutely.
Because Assistant Chief Pilgrim and I have been communicating a lot in the last few days about one of the fires that was already referenced, and that there's been rumors or people saying that Sandy was able to get to that fire quicker than us. Could you just clarify that? Because we've been going back and forth and you've looked over the reports.
yeah. And those are tricky. A lot of times when a fire first happens, there's so much going on. I've heard a few news stories and a few comments that I wasn't 100% sure even myself, the details on that. I talked to the crew who was there and got confirmation that 116, our engine was there first. And so after talking with Tim, I pulled the data, I pulled the actual call to get all the numbers. And 116 was definitely there first. The captain took command and was referenced, and Councilwoman Burrell's correct. When you show up with a certain amount of people, you can only do so much. Doesn't mean you can't do nothing. You can only do certain things. And so the crew got there within less than 5 minutes of the call actually coming in, which is pretty remarkable. With traffic and day-to-day stuff, wherever they were at, they got there really quick, and they began fire attack literally the second they got there. And to even depict what the crew was able to accomplish, the paramedic in the back grabbed the hose and went and started attacking the fire. The captain took command and actually went inside with the neighbor because they knew there was a resident in there because they're familiar with the homeowner. And the engineer got his own water supply. So 3 people, fire attack, someone going in on an immediate rescue because there's a life safety issue, and the engineer getting water because the engine pumps, you can literally run 1,000 gallons out of an engine in a minute, depending on what you're using. And so with that hose, not that fast, but that firefighter's gonna run out of water pretty fast. So everyone came together on that scene and did that. Sandy was there. They came in 3 minutes after 116, looking at the call data. So 116 was there within about 4.5 minutes. The next engine was engine 32, which is a little bit further away than 116. They were 3 minutes past. And then 110, our ladder got there just after that Sandy engine. Then what happened is they called for a second alarm because of the heat and the fire and the trapped occupants, and that brings another 4 or 5 apparatus. And so what tends to happen is when you have an influx of resources coming, time gets a little disproportionate and stuff starts happening and people think or saw or feel. And so we always have to go back to the numbers and the calls and the statistics, and that really answers those questions. So it's hard in the heat of in the moment, people see and hear and do that. And so it makes sense that there's some discrepancy in what happens until we can just look at the facts.
So with the 3-man crew, we are able to have somebody go inside a home? Is that
It's the
correct?
captain's discretion. And I want to be very clear, it's not a practice that nationwide that is condoned or even endorsed. But what we trust is our officers to show up on the scene and make a life or death decision. That's what they're trained to do. That's what they're expected to do. A lot of times it may be completely inappropriate to do that and they won't go inside at all. And so what we have to really rely on is that first arriving officers got the kind of the courage, but the knowledge and the experience to say yes or no. That's something we can do based off of what they had, what they saw, what they knew. That captain, I talked to him personally several times. He felt comfortable doing what he did, but he shared with me it was not fun nor comfortable. Super hot, very dangerous. They did what they had to do to protect that person by shutting the door. Then they kind of withdrew immediately to make sure that was better. So they didn't do a whole lot. They did enough to provide for some safety for the occupant and immediately got out. He said it was so hot. It was one of the hottest fires he's been on. And what we call the flashover actually happened in a stage where it gets so hot, everything in the house literally starts on fire at the same time. And so basically the time they arrived with the oxygen inflow and with them going in, that happened within seconds of him leaving. And they kept the firefighter on the back outside, and he fought fire from the outside. So they can do stuff, but like I say, that he knew there was someone inside. He took a risk at his own, his own peril and made that decision. And like I say, it's captain to captain, experience level and tenacity and gut feeling is what's going to typically make that
Well,
determination.
a life
So,
was saved. So.
yeah.
thank you.
And I trust his judgment, and not all captains will make that same decision. You can put 10 people in that situation, you might get 10 different results, but our goal is to protect the public and ourselves. We're no good to anybody for hurt. So that's kind of our, how we try to operate.
So may I just ask one last question?
Sure.
In your professional expertise, is revisiting the number of personnel at the station 116, is that something that in your opinion should be revisited by the Cottonwood Heights City Council?
I mean, of course, yeah, I think that's something we should look at every time we're in that situation. It's busy enough around here and there's enough of those kind of calls. And what we need to kind of consider too is efficiency and safety. Having 4 people there, you now don't have a resident helping the captain, you have a trained firefighter helping the captain. And, outcome probably would have been the same. I don't know that the call would have gone differently, but there's a lot of calls where just having that extra experienced hand can certainly help and make a difference. And efficiency does equal safety at some point, right? Where you have more hands to do things safely. I mean, the engineer taking his water supply, that's pretty standard. And sometimes as a firefighter, I've grabbed a hose by myself and gone and started putting a fire out, but I can only do that for so long. It's 105 degrees outside. I'm hot. I'm worn out. So to have a counterpart right behind me to help me out's a game changer. Otherwise I'm hanging it out there and I'm getting tired. I might not even be inside, but just everything we're dealing with, it's hot, whether you're inside or
Well,
out.
I would certainly be interested in more statistical information about cities of our size that are in similar climates that, statistically with the outcomes. I mean, any additional data that you can give the council to consider, I'd be interested.
And we'll see what we can find. I think ultimately it's risk acceptance, what you're willing to risk or accept. And likewise, and we'll always advocate for full-handed staffing, right? 4 people in the station. So it definitely is an important conversation to continue having and just make sure we have all the facts and data and that it's the right decision for the city. But, we'll always advocate for that. That's, that is kind of our position is we definitely want to be as staffed as fully as possible so we can do those things and be safe and provide a good service to the community. We'll do our best all the time. And obviously more helps, right? So, but
It looks like the call volume, and I know they made that change from a 4 to 3-man crew in 2018. It looks like it's about, 285 to 161, 56% down to 30%. So I know that's why the number of calls
Yeah.
we get is fewer, but I think it's worthy to look at that as well. So
Yeah.
I know we're looking at population growth up there. I hope it gets going. So I think it'll be wide.
yeah. And we want to do all we can to educate you and give you the facts. We don't want to do this impulsively or because, hey, we said so, we should do this. I think it's important to consider all the information. Some of it, there's no data to back it up. I think some of it's just experience and gut and just what we deal with. But 110 is really critical that we maintain that too, because they have the ladder there. And I mean, if you cut people off the ladder too, that's really challenging. And the other thing we don't want to rely on, even though it is how we operate, is a neighboring city or somebody else there. We have no control over their staffing. And so there might be a day where Sandy has 3 people. There might be a day where they have 2 and 2, and we can't control that, And so if they show up on a scene and they show up with 2 firefighters, then we got to wait 5 more minutes for an ambulance, and that still, it's more help, but it puts them in a bind too. They can only do so much. So what's important is what's doing right for Cottonwood Heights and not worrying about what other people can do to help us out, because they may be on a call, they may be busy. So it's really what we can do for our city. So, but looking at this, I feel good about the numbers. To the mayor's point, 116 does run less calls, but doesn't mean they're less dangerous or less challenging, right? They just run fewer numbers, but a lot of stuff happening in Cottonwood Heights, but nothing too abnormal other than what I mentioned with those cooking fires. This again, our emergent time, so our 50th percentile. So 50% of our times are better than that 453, and the 90% of our times are better than that 717. That's actually improving as we look at that. So it could be traffic, it could just be, call locations. It really depends on what's going on there. But that is, to me, a good thing to see is those times improving, getting quicker. So then this just shows kind of what we're commonly see here, where our calls typically end up being is our higher density areas, right, where there's more population. So again, nothing too abnormal with this one. We like to keep good track of that. And then this kind of depicts why 110 is busier. They're closer to those population centers and they're running a lot of calls. So then just the heat map that kind of shows the same thing. Just that whole Fort Union corridor down to Union Park is pretty busy. Really for us this time of year, we don't say this very often, I'll knock on wood, but once the budget's done and things kind of wind down, we kind of have a little bit of, I don't want to call it slow time, but it's not quite as busy unless we get a busy wildland season or there's training or other stuff going on. And luckily for the last few months, we've had a chance to get a breather in, take some time off and catch up on some other things. But one of the biggest things we've accomplished or that happened with us in the last quarter was the graduation. So we had 22 new firefighters complete recruit camp, which is awesome. They're out in the streets right now. They're working. I do think there's one here in Cottonwood Heights at Station 110. And for us, it's kind of crazy because we just started our hiring process for our next camp. As soon as these individuals are out, we're already testing and we're getting ready for the next group that will go through in January, February. So we had that. We had quite a few promotions with Chief Burchett getting promoted. We promoted a new assistant chief. Zach Robinson, if you guys have seen the board meeting, Zach's there. He's been over our logistics division and now he's over the support services section and handles a lot of the station construction and pretty familiar with Cottonwood Heights he's doing a lot of seismic work on 110 and 116.
Zach formerly of Sandy?
Zach, no, not that Zach. No, Zach's been a UFA person. He's been with us for about almost 20, I think he's almost at his 30-year mark. And then came from Las Vegas prior to that. But I know the Zach Robinson you're talking about. Yeah. He was a past firefighter city council person, I believe, with Sandy. So, but yeah, so Zach's one of our new ACs. And like I say, we'll start gearing up again for, this time of year gets pretty busy. We actually start talking budget in about 2 months. And, we just approved one. We'll already start working on next cycle. So, but yeah, that's about what I have for our report. Is there any other questions or comments?
So Chief Burchett, is invited to our next business or it's our work session. So he will come and introduce himself to the council in the first meeting in September. So
Yeah,
looking forward to that. Thank you, Chief Program. We are extremely grateful. Like we said, there was life saved because of your quick response. Thank you for all you do. We're super, super grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. So we have 4 legislative items to consider as a council tonight. First is consideration of ordinance 387, approving the vacation and consolidation with adjoining city-owned realty of a portion of the 3000 East right-of-way. We discussed this item earlier in our work session. Are there any other questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve ordinance 387.
We approve ordinance 387.
I'll second that.
Motion to approve from Councilmember Bracken and a second from Councilmember Burrell. Any final questions, comments? We'll now call for the vote. Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken,
Yes.
Councilmember Newell,
Yes.
Councilmember Burrell.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Next will be consideration of resolution 2022-42, accepting a bid and approving entry into a construction contract with Peck Striping Inc. for the 2022 citywide striping project. We also discussed this item in our work session. Are there any other questions or comments from the council? Okay, at this point, I will entertain a motion to approve resolution 2022-42.
I'll make that motion to approve resolution 22-42.
I'll second that.
Motion to approve from Councilmember Newell and a second from Councilmember Peterson. Final questions, comments? We'll now call for the vote. Councilmember Bracken,
Yes.
Councilmember Newell,
Yes.
Councilmember Burrell.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Next is consideration of resolution 2022-43 approving an interlocal agreement with Canyon School District for busing services. We did discuss this item as well earlier in our work session. Are there any other questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve resolution 2022-43.
I'll motion to approve resolution 2022-43.
I'll second that.
Motion to approve from Councilmember Burrell and a second from Councilmember Peterson. Final questions, comments? I will now call for the vote. Councilmember Newell,
Yes.
Councilmember Burrell.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken. Yes. And I will vote yes. Okay, the final item for our this evening resolution, the last legislative item for this evening is 7.4, consideration of resolution 2022-44. Another item that we discussed earlier in our work session. Are there any other questions or comments from the council? If not, could I have a motion to approve? I will entertain a motion to approve resolution 2022-44.
I move that we approve.
I'll second.
Motion to approve from Councilmember Peterson and a second from Councilmember Newell. Final questions, comments? I will now call for the vote. Councilmember Burrell,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken.
Yes.
Councilmember Newell.
Yes.
I will vote. Okay, the final item on our agenda this evening is approval of the consent calendar, the minutes for our meetings on August 2nd. Could I get a motion to approve these?
I motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
Motion to approve from Councilmember Burrell and a second from Councilmember Peterson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That concludes the items on tonight's agenda. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'm going to adjourn, make the motion quickly before Doug leaves.
I'll second.
I'll second
All
that.
in favor, say aye.
Second. Aye.
Any opposed? Get on the road, Tim.